Is Charlie a bad character? Or let me rephrase that. Is there a reason why so many Hazbin Hotel fans seem to gravitate towards other characters rather than the main character of the series? Because after being in the fandom for a little bit, I've started to notice that Charlie isn't as well liked as I thought she would. Because when I first started watching through the series, I thought that Charlie would be one of the most popular characters, but when I went into fandom spaces, I was surprised to find out that I was wrong. And although there are some people who do have Charlie as their favorite character, a lot of people don't. Now, I expected some Charlie disrespect, but the stuff that I've been seeing is kind of crazy. And I know what a lot of people are going to say. Well, obviously people are going to gravitate towards characters that they find more interesting, and with the cast of Hazbin being as expansive as it is, this just makes sense. And I would say for the most part, you're right, but I do find it a bit strange that Charlie as the main character and as the main focus of the story isn't very interesting to a lot of people, but why is that? Does the side cast truly overshadow Charlie so much that she is consistently pushed into the background even though she's supposed to be the main character? And if that's the case, it really does beg the question, are the characters around her just so much better because Charlie is a bad character? Does she truly have such mundane characterization that people aren't really excited to follow her story? Or is there a different reason why people are gravitating towards the other characters so much? There's really only one way to find out, and that's by going through every single episode and seeing if Charlie is actually a bad character. So let's get into it. And of course, there's no better way to start this off than by going through episode 1, because this is the introduction to Charlie. The episode starts off with a massive lore drop, in which he basically tells us the entire situation of what's happening with the world, how hell was created, what the situation is with Lucifer, and of course, what she's trying to do with her hotel. The entire point of this introduction scene isn't really to introduce us to Charlie as a character, but instead to give us something called exposition. Charlie is just basically telling us everything that we need to know for the series, all of the important lore drops, all of the juicy details, and of course, things that we should know about Charlie and her actual life. We also get our first interaction and introduction to Vaggie, Charlie's love interest, and I think that it's pretty cute. I mean, not much really happens, we just kind of get an introduction to the character, and I think that this is probably one of the biggest reasons why people don't really care about the Charlie and Vaggie ship. It's because we just don't really get a lot into it. And I think the first scene is a really good example of that. I think that Charlie and Vaggie have a really good dynamic, but there's nothing really there to keep me interested in the relationship. Now, I love the relationship between Vaggie and Charlie, don't get me wrong, but what substance is there really behind it? I enjoy cute things, and I think that this scene is very cute, and I love the fact that Vaggie always supports Charlie, but when we're really looking at it, this doesn't really tell us about the characters' relationships at all, other than the fact that they're in a relationship. And I think this sums up pretty nicely why this opening scene doesn't really grab you into the character of Charlie, because there's nothing really there. There's a lot of exposition, and it's a lot of building the world around her, but not really building Charlie as a character. So right off the bat, you're more interested in the world that is being built rather than the main character, and I think this also moves into the next scene. And especially in this episode, I think you guys are going to start to see the trend where Charlie is pushed to the background and other story elements are brought to the foreground. Because right after that huge exposition scene, we immediately get introduced to one of the best characters in the series, Alistair. Alistair is sassy, he's charismatic, he's funny, he's interesting, and he's mysterious, and you can tell right away that this character is introduced way better than Charlie was. You are immediately taken in by Alistair, his entire aesthetic, but most importantly, his character, which I think is very important. And something else that's very important to know during this scene is that the conversation is mostly between Alistair and Vaggie, and they immediately have a very interesting character dynamic. From this scene alone, we know that Alistair and Vaggie don't have a very good relationship. Alistair likes to push a lot of Vaggie's buttons, and she just gets inordinately mad at Alistair. And of course, again, Charlie is kind of just in the background. She's very passive during this scene, and a lot of the screen time is taken up by Vaggie and Alistair. Alistair's first scene isn't him dropping lore, it's just him being himself. It's him showing the best parts of his characteristics, and of course, having a really cool interaction with one of the other characters in the hotel. And that's why people are immediately drawn to him. As soon as he gets on screen, he eats up his screen time. He is the most interesting thing in the entire room. People are drawn to characters with cool aesthetics who are an antagonist or an anti-hero, whatever you like to call them, and Alistair fills this position very nicely. During this conversation, when you're looking at how Charlie reacts to a lot of stuff, she's more of a pacifist, she's very laid back, and she kinda lets other people take the spotlight. And it just gets worse with the introduction of Angel Dust, because when Angel Dust is on screen, he is entertaining, he is funny, and right away he establishes his characteristics. After Angel Dust, we get the introduction to Husk and Nifty. Both have their own quirky characteristics and are immediately present on screen. This entire scene is basically just to establish the other members of the hotel, so we have a pretty good grasp of the story going on. And from here, we immediately jump into a song number with Charlie, and this is where I think that people really start to lose Charlie as a character. Now, I think that the songs are a little bit controversial and has been, because although people really enjoy the soundtrack, I think that some people think that the songs do interrupt the story somewhat. But when you're really looking at it, songs are a good way to get out a lot of the exposition, tell people what's going on, and it's an easy way to speed up the story. In an 8-episode series, it's kind of hard to get a lot of depth out of certain conversations and characters, and a lot of that stuff you need more time for, so song numbers are a good way in order to develop these characters. And when you look at it, if people really enjoy a song, they're probably going to start enjoying the character that sings the song too, right? Yeah, a lot of people see where I'm going with this. The first song that we get from Charlie sounds just like a Disney song, and I think that that is one of the biggest issues with Charlie's song numbers, is the fact that people don't really like them. Now, I think a lot of people prematurely judged Happy Day in Hell. I think that that song is an absolute bop, and if you have not re-listened to that song, I would suggest doing so. But I think that the initial reaction to Happy Day in Hell, and also a lot of Charlie's song numbers for that matter, just didn't really hit with the audience, and this is a big issue because it does have a lot of characterization for Charlie. There are some characters who can get away with having a bad song, but they also have to have the character quirks and the humor in order for people to really like them. And when you're looking at Charlie, she's kind of a boring character right off the bat. There's nothing that's very interesting about her. She's an open book. There's nothing that you really need to look into with her character. And so in the first 2 episodes, we really are relying on these song numbers in order to get us more invested in this character. And the issue is that people don't really vibe with them. And this is one of the first major flaws with Charlie's characterization, is the fact that we really didn't get a lot of her character right off the bat. Her song number wasn't something that people necessarily vibed with, and because of that, we're more drawn to the other characters in the series. And before I move off of the song numbers, there's something that I have to bring up, because I feel like this is the main reason why people dislike Charlie's songs. Why do they act like Charlie's singing is annoying in the show? Now, don't get me wrong, I think that the first joke that Vaggie says is funny, but I want you to think about it really quickly. One of the ways you're trying to develop your main character is through her first song number, and yet, right before she's able to sing it, we have the well completely poisoned by the other characters who think that she should not sing because she always does it. You are right away telling people that Charlie's singing is annoying. Why? Why would you do that to a character that hasn't even gotten a chance to show who she really is? Now, this isn't the first time that this has happened in media, where a character who has pretty good songs and is a pretty good singer is looked at as annoying, and therefore the audience sees them as annoying. Pinkie Pie. But Happy Day in Hell is such a good example of this, because throughout the entire song number, everybody seems like they are super annoyed that Charlie is singing. Re-listening to the song in the album right now? Perfect, really good, and I really enjoy it. Listening to the song right off the bat after just being introduced to the character, and this is the first song that I get in the series? Why? I found myself just as annoyed with Charlie as everybody around her. But I've been talking about the song number too much, so let me just catch you back up on the story. Charlie is going to meet Adam, one of the angels, in order to try to stop the extermination, which was a big plot point in the beginning. And Alistair and Vaggie are at the hotel, and they're trying to figure out how to make a commercial in order to advertise the hotel. Which, side note to this, this doesn't go anywhere. This plot point is completely useless. Now, it does a really good job at establishing the relationship between Alistair and Vaggie, something that I think is very important, but they don't even show the commercial after this. The entire commercial was completely useless and meaningless. I also think it's really interesting that they never really delve into the fact that Vaggie is just as invested in the hotel as Charlie, and they kind of just always act like it's Charlie's idea. I don't know, I just feel like Vaggie's been shafted, but that's for another video. But that's okay, because although Alistair and Vaggie's storyline is a little bit more interesting and funny, we finally get Charlie going to the Angel. She meets Adam, and she's going to finally say her piece. No, she's totally overshadowed again. Yes, the introduction of Adam is fantastic because Adam is a really good villain. But let's be honest, he completely demolishes Charlie in this scene. He acts like she's annoying, he doesn't listen to her, and again, he completely dismisses everything that she says. And this would be totally okay if we knew the type of person that Charlie was, but at this point in the story, what do we really know about her? She thinks that people can be redeemed, she wants to make a hotel in order for redemption, and she's a pretty passive person who likes to sing. Oh, and people find her really annoying. Oh, and people interrupt her, like, all the time. So we see a defeated Charlie walk back to the hotel. She's trying to tell Vaggie what happened, but is immediately cut off, and then we kind of get the ending sequence where we know that the extermination has been moved up. Finally done with episode 1, let's go sum up what exactly we learned about Charlie. We learned that Charlie is one of the least interesting people in the entire cast so far. I just think that this first episode isn't a really good introduction to Charlie's character, and unfortunately, it just had to be that way. All of the other characters needed to get introduced. We needed to get introduced to Adam, and also, I think that Charlie just couldn't really be the main focus in this episode, other than her song number, in which everybody said that she was annoying. Charlie gives off some major camp counselor vibes in this episode, but there's not really too much substance to her. We know what she wants to have and what her end goal is, but we don't really know why. We don't really know what type of character she is. Does she get upset? Does she get angry? We saw that she got a little annoyed, but she seems like she brushes that off pretty easily. She's a very passive person. But we don't know why she's a passive person. She's just not very interesting. I do think that this is going to lead to some amazing character development later on, and Charlie may stand up for herself more, or she may grow into a completely different type of person, but for right now, she's kind of just somebody who gets walked over, interrupted, and isn't really the spotlight, even in her own song numbers. At the end of the first episode, I think that people are really interested in Alastor, Adam, and Vaggie. They were the characters with the most screen time, and I also think that they were the characters with the most characterization. And really quickly, before we go into the next episode, I do want to talk about the philosophy that Charlie holds, that any person can be redeemed. Because in theory, this is something that could be really cool for a character that's down in hell. Do these people actually deserve redemption, and why does Charlie think this way? And although this could be a really interesting conversation for later in the series, as of right now, it kind of just shows Charlie as a person who thinks this way because she wants to help people. Unfortunately, like the rest of Charlie's characterization in the first episode, this lacks a lot of substance and it's very surface. And although the concept of somebody thinking that sinners, people who have lived entire lives of sin and have done horrible things, deserve redemption is so cool, they treat it as something that's pretty mundane, so you're not really too interested in it when you first hear it. And also, if you like my analysis so far, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it, and it does help out the channel a lot. So let's get into it. Episode 2, and in this episode, we're definitely going to get more focus on Charlie. We're going to get more into her character, why she really thinks that... Oh no. No. Instead, we get a far bigger focus on, again, the side characters of Hazbin. The episode starts off with the introduction of Serpentius fighting Alastor, or at least trying to fight Alastor. Bro is not doing too well. Of course, Alastor ends up beating him, his coat ends up getting ripped, and Serpentius is blasted off like Team Rocket. Alastor ends up leaving to get his coat tailored, even though his coat is already ripped. I never really understood this. And then we get introduced to the V's, one of the main bad guy groups in Hazbin Hotel. We get a lot of lore into not only the relationship with Alastor, but also Valentino's relationship with Angel Dust, and then we get probably one of my favorite song numbers in the entirety of the series. Oh boy, I hope that Charlie doesn't have a song number that's completely overshadowed by one of the side characters again. And I sure hope this isn't a trend for the entire series. Ha ha ha, jokes. But yeah, after the song number, the V's end up sending Serpentius in order to spy on the hotel, and this is where we get the Serpentius and Charlie stuff. And the episode setup is really important, and you guys are going to see why it's so important later in the episode. Because basically, Charlie completely accepts Serpentius right away. She doesn't have any qualms about him, doesn't suspect anything, and also just completely trusts him that he wants to actually be redeemed as a sinner. And when we're adding to our list of Charlie characteristics, gullible is one of them that I definitely expected to be there. But here's where it gets a little interesting, because Charlie goes from gullible to completely oblivious very quickly. Because it's clear right off the bat that Angel Dust has a big issue with Serpentius. And Angel Dust is totally in the right here. I mean, Serpentius just attacked the hotel, just tried to kill Alastor, and Charlie just doesn't have any qualms about letting him inside. And yeah, Charlie is in the background for a lot of this episode, and we focus mainly on Angel Dust's emotions. And I think in this episode, you start to realize that Angel Dust is one of the most complex characters in the entire series, and I think that that's why so many people really love him as a character. But specifically in this episode, did you guys notice something weird? Yeah, Charlie is almost completely oblivious to Angel Dust's emotions, almost as if she can't understand him. Charlie consistently puts Angel Dust in positions that make him extremely uncomfortable, even though she is trying to help him quote-unquote get redeemed. Why wouldn't she at some point take him aside and just ask him what's wrong? I mean, we quite might literally see a scene in which Charlie writes Angel Dust as the villain and Angel just walks off as if he doesn't want to be a part of it anymore and Charlie just doesn't care. Now, I understand these scenes, they're supposed to be played off as comedy, but when you're really looking at Charlie here, isn't she being a little too oblivious? And you know what truly grinded my gears this episode is the fact that Charlie sings this entire song about apologizing and truly meaning it, and yet never had a conversation with Angel Dust in which she kind of apologized for a lot of her actions. And I'm not being nitpicky here, this is something that is brought up in another episode in the series. And Charlie having this lack of empathy or emotional intelligence is something that's really prominent in the entire series. Do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying that she doesn't sympathize with a lot of her subjects, because very clearly she wants to help people. And it's also very clear in this episode that she has good intentions for Serpentius and for Angel Dust. But despite her good intentions, her actions leave a lot to be desired. I cannot be the only one that thinks that Charlie in this episode should have actually had a conversation with Angel Dust, instead of thinking that everything was okay and then just accepting Serpentius' apology. I mean, even when Angel Dust figured out that Serpentius was a traitor, they had clearly gotten into a fight, and Charlie didn't even thank Angel Dust. Charlie really got on my nerves this episode, but maybe that's just me. Episode 2 didn't really focus too much on Charlie, but it did add something interesting to her character. Good or bad, that is yet to be decided. Alright, let's keep going. Episode 3, an episode that was supposed to focus on Charlie and Vaggy's relationship. And you guys already heard me previously state that I really want to see what the dynamics of their relationship is truly like. And the premise of this episode is really interesting. The fact that Charlie and Vaggy are going to switch positions and we're going to see how they truly interact as a couple. And so it absolutely baffled me that they barely went into the relationship dynamic in this episode and instead, again, focused on the side characters. I'm sorry, but the A-plot between Charlie and Vaggy barely focused on Charlie and Vaggy. Seriously, I want you guys to look at how many lines Vaggy and Charlie have together in this episode. There's not a lot. I'm fine with the A-plot in a comedic show being filled with a lot of jokes, but when it takes away from the story, that's when I start to have an issue with it. Of course, again, the B-plot was fantastic with Alistair, we get a ton into lore, we get some really fun moments, and we get a great song number. But also, unlike in the A-plot where we kind of just get a lot of jokes and not too much insight into Charlie and Vaggy, the B-plot is able to expand upon a lot of the Overlord's personalities, make them very interesting, and also adds a little bit of mystery as to who actually killed the angel. And I know that you guys may think that I'm being very overly critical of the show so far, but in an 8-episode series, you need to use every ounce of screen time you can. The jokes are fantastic, and they build a lot of the dynamic between the characters, but at some points, it does seem like it's detracting away from the main focus of the episode. Which is fine, don't get me wrong, Hazbin Hotel is a comedy. But was I the only one in this episode that was kind of getting mad at Charlie? Think about it for a second. Charlie didn't even tell Vaggy that she was going to be leading these exercises and just kind of threw her into the fray, didn't even give her time to prepare. And then as soon as the first exercise starts going wrong, an exercise that Charlie came up with, by the way, she immediately tries to butt in and tell Vaggy exactly what to do. And in my opinion, I just feel like this makes Charlie kind of a bad person. Charlie in this episode kind of feels like a control freak. She feels like she's putting far too much stress on Vaggy, and it's something that they do bring up. Vaggy even states, "What use am I if I can't help you?" And a lot of the stuff that happens in this episode isn't Vaggy's fault. She wasn't prepared for this, and Charlie set her up to fail. Charlie kind of was a bad girlfriend. Like, am I the only one seeing this? Why on earth would you put Vaggy in this situation without preparing her and then constantly try to nitpick her as she's trying to do her best? Give the girl some space, allow her to breathe. Eventually, everything comes to a head where Vaggy just wants to be left alone and Charlie just leaves her? Bro, why would they do this? This would be such a perfect opportunity for Charlie to tell everybody else to leave and to talk to Vaggy in this situation, tell her exactly why she put her in charge and what she was really expecting. But also, it would be a good opportunity for Charlie to apologize and correct Vaggy on some of the stuff that she says. Vaggy flat out says that she's only useful if she's able to help Charlie. That's the only purpose that she has. Why wouldn't Charlie correct her on this? Like, bro, that's somebody that you're supposed to care about. It's somebody who's been helping you and supporting you this entire time. And in this episode, it kind of makes Charlie look like a bad person to the fact that she has been consistently pushing all of her values on Vaggy and wanting her to be perfect right off the bat. She puts so much stress on somebody that she supposedly loves only to have them break down at some point and then can't even stay to correct her mistake. We end up getting a really good song number between Carmilla Carmine and Vaggie, and I think that it's really good for Vaggie's character development because she basically says that she's doing all of this because she truly loves Charlie and she wants to protect her. And at the end of the episode, there's a kind of apology, I guess. Charlie does apologize, but I feel like Charlie doesn't apologize for the right things. Because very similarly to episode 2, Charlie in this episode has like zero emotional intelligence. And I feel like a bigger part of this episode should have been dedicated to Charlie and Vaggie really talking out what they mean to each other and what their relationship actually entails. Because instead, it seems like Vaggie is just completely okay being Charlie's punching bag for the time being, and Charlie gets to have her way. And so episode 3 cemented that Charlie is emotionally immature. She doesn't really know how to handle certain situations, and although she means well, she doesn't really know how to express that or really express her feelings. And honestly, I really like that about her character. I know that a lot of people thought that this was going to be completely negative, but I feel like Charlie being a person that is trying to do well and yet consistently makes people feel bad is so interesting to me. Charlie has a really hard time not only understanding other people's emotions, but processing her own emotions. And yes, I wish that this episode focused more on the actual relationship between Charlie and Vaggie. It did give us some pretty interesting insights into who Charlie was as a person, and I wish that they really fleshed this out more. At this point in the story, we know that Charlie is passive, but sometimes she's passive because she doesn't really understand the situations that she's in. If she feels like something isn't going her way, she's just going to try to correct it and take control. She's kind of a bossy person, but in a passive way. It's almost like every time she gets involved into something, she ends up making it worse. At this point in the story, it seems like Charlie has some sort of psychological need to butt in when things seem to be going out of control, and she does this because she has, of course, good intentions. She's doing this because she thinks it helps other people, but in reality, it seems like she's just making things worse. Episode 4, I was right, Charlie has zero emotional intelligence. She consistently messes up her relationships because she's incredibly awkward and does the wrong things in social situations. And when I tell you that episode 4 may be one of the best episodes to show us who Charlie truly is as a character, I'm not lying. Yes, again in this episode, she gets obviously overshadowed by Angel Dust. And yes, Angel Dust is a fantastic character. His 2 song numbers were fantastic. I love the way that they explain the relationship between him and Valentino, him and Charlie, and him and Husk. And there's a lot of emotional depth with Angel Dust in this episode, but I'm not even going to focus on that. Because there's something that people miss about Charlie in this episode, and that's the fact that she's naive. And it was this episode that made me really interested in Charlie because she does not understand how people work. Charlie wants to help people. She wants to be able to save people and bring them up to heaven because she has so much love for all of her subjects, right? And yet for some reason, she doesn't understand the political system that a lot of them are under. She can't understand the situation that Angel Dust is in and realize that she may be making the situation worse. She doesn't realize that maybe the world doesn't revolve around her. That's right, Charlie has a savior complex, and it's something that Husk does say in the beginning of the episode. Charlie is trying her best to save every single person, but she doesn't know how. Charlie is socially awkward. She doesn't understand why people act the way they do in certain social situations. Like, did you guys notice that she had trouble talking to Valentino? Or that in the beginning of the episode, when Angel Dust was showing his film, Charlie was really not digging it. And yes, I'm sure that it was pretty gross for Charlie to see, but when you're really thinking about it, it's hell. It's everywhere. It doesn't really make sense for Charlie, the princess of hell, to be so prude, does it? Although Charlie has a kind heart, she doesn't understand how people truly feel. She doesn't understand the fact that Angel Dust was trying to protect her when he yelled at her. Very similarly to a child, she just thought Angel Dust is yelling at me, therefore he is mad at me because I did something wrong. And when Charlie apologizes, she doesn't understand what she did wrong. And I'm not trying to infantilize Charlie here, but it does kind of remind me of a child when you punish them, right? The child doesn't necessarily understand the moral ramifications of what they did. Like, for example, if a kid steals candy from the store, you're not going to go over the moral ramifications or the Kantian ethics of why stealing is wrong, right? You're gonna yell at the kid, and the kid is gonna realize stealing is wrong because my parents got mad. That's kind of how Charlie acts here. And so now, all of Charlie's previous behavior is starting to make a lot of sense to me. The reason why Charlie is so passive in conversations and why she lets Vaggie talk the majority of the time is because she's just not confident. She doesn't really understand how conversations are supposed to work, and therefore she's going to let Vaggie, who is far better at them, communicate for her. And because Charlie doesn't really have the life experience that a lot of these sinners have, she's not going to be able to truly understand what they're going through. Because of her limited social experience, she doesn't have the emotional intelligence to really help people out. It's why in this episode that Vaggie sends Husk after Angel Dust rather than Charlie. Because Vaggie knows that Charlie doesn't understand what she did wrong. Charlie is just trying to help people in whatever way that she can. And I've seen a lot of people say that it was completely contrived that Vaggie got Husk to go after Angel Dust, but it makes so much sense when you're looking at it through this lens. Vaggie knew Charlie could never understand what Angel Dust is going through, so she had to get Husk, who has a better understanding and more life experience, to help Angel Dust out. And the reason why Vaggie couldn't go herself is because she had to sit down and explain to Charlie what she did wrong. And so all of a sudden, the previous 4 episodes not only make so much more sense, but it also gives us a wider view of who Charlie is. And so finally we have a far better understanding of Charlie as a character, and because we finally have that groundwork set, now we can start getting the development added onto her. This, of course, brings us into episode 5, and this was the episode that I truly started to really love Charlie. Unfortunately, by this point of the series, a lot of people probably already have their top 5 favorite characters set, and I think this is one of the reasons why Charlie really isn't in people's favorites. Because it was episode 5 in which Charlie started to truly develop. For starters, I love the fact that Lucifer and Charlie are paralleled so nicely in this episode. It really does go to show that Charlie looks up to her father, and that's one of the reasons why she is constantly trying to redeem people. I love the fact that Lucifer was the one who put into her head that sinners could be redeemed, and it's something that Charlie held with her throughout her entire life. And it is so interesting that Lucifer, who originally had the same dream as Charlie, became a jaded person because he experienced the realities of what hell truly entails. Whereas Charlie had been sheltered her entire life, she was not subject to the realities of what hell is, and therefore she held on to her dad's dream. And I think that in this episode, we truly understand why Charlie is so steadfast in her beliefs, and it's because she is genuinely trying to complete the dream that her dad once had. Very similarly to Lucifer, Charlie doesn't really think of the consequences of her actions. We see this throughout the entire series. Well, she'll do things with good intentions, but she doesn't really think about the bad things that could happen. It's the same thing in the beginning of the series. Lucifer gave Eve the apple, but didn't realize that this would lead to evil seeping into the world. And I love the fact that Charlie's steadfast beliefs can cloud her judgment, and it's one of the reasons why she messes up a lot. It's also why she can come off as a bit annoying at times, because she's constantly trying to tell people what's good and what they should do. But I think in this episode, it's cemented that Charlie is genuinely coming from a good place. She just wants to help her dad achieve the dream that he once had. And although she doesn't necessarily understand the world, she still wants to change it, and that's one of the reasons why we have so much conflict in the series. Charlie sees that things are bad, but she doesn't understand why things are bad, and she thinks that she can fix it. But the issue is that if she doesn't understand the root causes of things, she's never going to be able to truly make things better. I also really enjoyed the subplot that Charlie is slowly being manipulated by Alistair. I think it adds a lot to her character, and it shows just how naive she truly is. It's pretty clear that Charlie has some severe daddy issues, and Alistair sees this and takes advantage of this. And I think it starts to show that Charlie, because she is so naive, can be easily corrupted and swayed. Another really cool facet to her character because it shows that she's flawed, just like everybody else. And although she tries to have this air of perfection and that she is somebody who can help others, she really needs to start looking inward and mature. So overall, I think that this is a really good episode to not only develop Charlie and Alistair's relationship, Charlie and Lucifer's relationship, but also Charlie as a person and why she is so steadfast in her beliefs. Okay, at the end of episode 5, Lucifer ends up giving in to Charlie, and Charlie and Vaggie are going to go to heaven. I know I've been slacking with the recaps, but I think that it's important to recap these specific scenes. Because at the beginning of episode 6, we see that Charlie and Vaggie are getting ready, and we get a really good look at their dynamic. Vaggie is a total pushover, she'll give in to anything that Charlie says, and it makes a lot of sense given her character. Again, it's a very cute scene, but there's something that's very important here, and it's the fact that Charlie does rely on Vaggie. Because when you think about it, Charlie could go to heaven by herself, but she ends up taking Vaggie. Why? Because she genuinely wants her there. Vaggie is her support, and if she's going to do something, she would rather do it with Vaggie. If something is important to Charlie, she wants Vaggie there because Vaggie is one of the most important people to her. This scene is really sweet because Charlie does trust Vaggie with a lot. If there's something important in Charlie's life, she wants Vaggie there as well. Vaggie is her support, she's her rock, and without her, Charlie couldn't do anything. And at this point in time, we have to remember, Charlie still thinks that Vaggie is a sinner, but she trusts her to not mess anything up for her and to actually help her out. I sure hope this trust isn't completely violated later in the episode. I also enjoy how Charlie is super optimistic, and it's probably one of her best traits that she thinks that if she goes up to heaven and talks to somebody who isn't Adam, they're going to listen to her. Which I guess in theory she's correct, because Emily does end up listening and agreeing with her, but I still find it strange that Charlie didn't think that maybe Adam was oh, I don't know, the product of the system that she's trying to fight against, and that people have probably signed off on what he's doing. But that's beside the point, because Charlie goes up to heaven and she has an absolutely fantastic time. She broadens her horizons, but of course she's still kind of naive to what's to come. Charlie ends up leaving with Emily to go to a petting zoo, and we get a really interesting interaction between Adam and Vaggie, in which we not only find out that Vaggie is an angel, shocker I know, but also that she was one of the exterminators that just so happened to be kicked out of heaven and run into Charlie, in which they have immediate chemistry. Jesus, Charlie, calm down, you horn dog. Vaggie gives like the faintest smile as she's on the ground suffering in pain, and Charlie's like, God damn, that is one sexy sinner. All jokes aside, there was definitely an immediate connection with both of them, which is cute. It's literally like a Disney princess, love at first sight. Also, Adam is just completely iconic in this scene. It has nothing to do with Charlie, he's just so cool. But finally, we get to the trial and we see that Charlie is just totally unprepared for what's to come. Again, something that is completely within her character. She doesn't really understand how things work, and she doesn't really understand how to get her point across too well. You can tell without Vaggie basically hand-holding her throughout this conversation that Charlie is struggling. And eventually, like how we all expected, the angels don't end up giving in to Charlie's demands. Everybody except for Emily, who ends up agreeing with Charlie because she's a direct parallel to her. And of course, we get probably one of my favorite song numbers in the entire show, but there is something very interesting to note here. This is one of the first times that Charlie does not listen to Vaggie. Vaggie tells Charlie to keep a cool head and to calm down, and Charlie does not listen to her. And why? Why does Charlie not listen to Vaggie in this situation? In basically every other situation we've gotten in the series so far, Charlie has just given into Vaggie and whatever she says. And it's simply because Charlie is super upset because she finally understands how the world works. She understands that regardless of what she shows, regardless of how much evidence that she has to support her claims, people will not listen. And it's one of the reasons why when her and Emily get up and they're saying that if hell is forever, then heaven is a lie, is because she's finally understanding that heaven will never listen to her. Because some people, regardless of what she shows them, will just never change their mind. And this is so important because Charlie's entire worldview has just been shattered. Because the entire time she thought that if she went up to heaven and pleaded her case and showed evidence that they would listen, that she could just be very passive about things and that people would understand her side. But that didn't happen. Instead, they basically just dismissed everything that she's been working towards. Her entire dream was shattered in an instant. And so, rightfully so, Charlie is pissed. And to make matters worse, right after her dream was crushed, right after her entire worldview was shattered, she finds out that the person that she trusted the most was lying to her for 3 years. And Charlie breaks down because she doesn't know how to handle all of this information. God, this episode was so good. And finally, 7 episodes into an 8-episode series, we get an episode that's completely dedicated to Charlie. And yes, this is one of my favorite episodes in the entire series. We start off the episode with immediate tension between Vaggie and Charlie as everybody is finding out that Vaggie is a fallen angel. Quick side note, yes, Vaggie is a fallen angel. She was cast down to hell by people who are in authority, and no, it wasn't just because she lost her wings. I made a short about this, and people were saying that Vaggie was only in hell because she had lost her wings, but I think they failed to realize that you have to go to heaven in a portal. Heaven is not just flying up, it is a dimensional portal which creates a rift between the realms. And to my knowledge, I don't think that Vaggie's wings can rip open dimensions, but that's just me being petty, so let's get back to the episode. We cut to Charlie, who is a complete emotional wreck in her room. She has no idea what to do, her entire worldview has been shattered, the person that she trusts the most no longer can be trusted. She is going through it. And to make matters worse, Alistair, one of the biggest manipulators in the series, ends up finding Charlie at her most vulnerable. And I really enjoy Charlie's emotional breakdown in this episode because it goes to show that Charlie never thought that a lot of this stuff could happen. She doesn't really think of the consequences to her actions. She just knows that she's trying to do good for people and she thinks that that's enough. But I think that Charlie is slowly realizing that just because you have good intentions doesn't necessarily mean that your actions are necessarily going to end up being good. I also think that Charlie matures a lot in this episode because during the conversation with Alistair, she flat out tells him that she wants to be able to defend herself against the angels. And episode 1 Charlie isn't going to do that. In episode 1, Charlie is thinking that she can talk it out with the angels rather than resorting to violence. And episode 1, Charlie is going to be a lot more passive than in episode 7, Charlie, who is thinking about the best way to save her friends. Because this is Charlie's lowest point. She's not even caring about her dream or redemption. She's caring about how to save the people she loves. And this is one of the reasons why Alistair is so easily able to manipulate her. I love how Alistair understands that the biggest weakness of Charlie is Vaggie and vice versa. That's how how Alistair was able to make the deal with Vaggie in the beginning, and with Charlie it was the same thing. Charlie was a complete emotional wreck, yes because her worldview and dream were kind of crushed, but also because the person she loved the most lied to her. Because when you think about it, she pretty quickly got over the fact that the angels were coming down to exterminate the hotel first, and that her entire worldview was kind of shattered. She had pretty much accepted both of those realities as soon as Alistair was able to give her a solution. This also shows how dependent Charlie is as a person and how easy it is to manipulate her, and why Vaggie is such an important character for Charlie. And you can tell how dependent Charlie has become on Vaggie because it was the only thing she could talk about or think about for the entire episode. Although Charlie is pretty naive, she's able to adapt pretty quickly to things. If she makes a mistake, she'll apologize. If she has a problem, she'll find a solution. But with this Vaggie situation, it seems like her emotions quite literally got the better of her, and she was unable to think clearly for the majority of the episode. The thing she said to Vaggie was downright cruel in this episode. And yes, at some level I do think that Vaggie kind of deserved it, but the true reason why Charlie was so upset at Vaggie is because Vaggie is the most important thing in her life. Point blank, period. There is nobody more important to Charlie than Vaggie. And without Vaggie, Charlie isn't the same person. She can't be the same person. Because we find out that Charlie and Vaggie have the same goal. Vaggie didn't want to be a part of the extermination anymore, and because of that, she was cast out of heaven. And when she did that, she probably didn't think that there was any way to truly stop it, she just knew what she was doing was wrong. But here comes Charlie, somebody who not only has a solution, but is able to help her dream become a reality. To Vaggie, Charlie was the person who offered a solution to something that she truly cared about. And because of that, that's why Vaggie is so into supporting Charlie's dream. Because at the end of the day, they both have the same dream. They both want to help the people of Hell because they don't think that the extermination is right. And it's why Charlie so easily gives up on the entire idea of redemption. Because without Vaggie, she doesn't care about it. And we see it in the episode. Charlie isn't as optimistic. She's completely off of her game. She doesn't really know how to speak. And it's almost like she lacks confidence in herself because without Vaggie, does the dream really even matter? Fortunately for us, best girl Rosie is able to snap Charlie out of this. Now listen, I've been yapping so much throughout this video about Charlie's emotional immaturity, but it really does come to the front in this scene, where after Charlie has an emotional outburst, Rosie brings her into a private room and asks her, yo, what's up? And when Charlie says that it's relationship problems, Rosie just basically goes through and asks, what is Charlie truly feeling? And Charlie starts answering these questions and starts getting shocked at what she's actually feeling. Like Charlie says something and she's like, that's awful. Do I actually think that? And this just goes to show that Charlie just cannot properly process her emotions. And this is probably my favorite scene in the entire series, because when you're looking at Charlie just going through and processing why she's feeling the way that she does, but also realizing that she still does love Vaggie, that the reason that this hurt her so much is because Vaggie is truly somebody that she loves and cares about, and that her feelings are valid, but she also has to realize that sometimes people will do things because they aren't proud of their past. And this is the first time that Charlie truly thinks that Vaggie had a reason to lie to her. Charlie was so focused on the fact that she was hurting, she didn't think about why Vaggie actually lied in the first place. And finally, for the first time in the series, Charlie is able to step into somebody else's shoes and understand that what they did may have been wrong, but it was for a reason that she can understand. Remember when I was talking about the scene where Angel Dust was yelling at Charlie and Charlie got really upset because she didn't understand that Angel Dust was just protecting her? This is exactly what she did with Vaggie. She didn't understand why Vaggie had done this to her and just took it as Vaggie being hurtful. And because Charlie cared so deeply about Vaggie, this hurt her to her core. And I love Rosie in the scene because she brings out such an excellent point that actions speak louder than words. And it is this line where Charlie finally looks outside of herself and realizes that Vaggie has pretty much been a perfect partner. She just made a simple mistake, and Charlie, now understanding why she made that mistake, is able to forgive her. And so finally, after 7 episodes, we see some emotional maturity come from Charlie. The Vaggie and Camilla scene is also really nice because it just reaffirms that Vaggie does truly love Charlie. We also get another song sung by Charlie, and I'll be honest, this is one of the weaker ones. It's definitely not bad, but the fact that Out for Love was in this episode, I mean, just another L for Charlie. I feel so bad for her songs. Her songs are good. I think that they're well sung, everything is really good, but man are they just outshone in every episode they're in. And of course, at the end of the episode, we get a really nice reunion between Vaggie and Charlie. It's super cute, it reaffirms the relationship, and it's one of the reasons why I genuinely really like this ship. Now, we definitely need more into the relationship dynamic. I want to know their history, but for right now, I think that this is a pretty good start. And now, of course, we're supposed to be going into episode 8, but before I go into episode 8, I really want to bring up something. Did you guys notice that throughout the 7 episodes, there was only one episode that truly did focus on Charlie? And now I love episode 7 because it made Charlie one of my favorite characters, and I think that Charlie was really good in this episode, but did you guys notice something? It took 7 episodes for Charlie to get an episode dedicated not only specifically to herself, but also specifically to her emotional development. And I think you guys know where I'm really going with this. Throughout 7 episodes, we really only had one episode focused on the main character, and by that time, people kind of already have the characters that they're really interested in. I think that this is one of the reasons why so many people don't seem to like Charlie or think that Charlie isn't as good as a character as other characters in the series just because they were developed first. I mean, look at Angel Dust. Angel Dust had 3 episodes before Charlie even had 1. Look at Alistair. Alistair has had multiple scenes in every episode dedicated to developing him, his lore, and what type of character he is. Heck, even in episode 5, I feel like Lucifer completely overshadowed Charlie in every aspect. More Than Anything is a really good song number, but did you guys notice that the conversation is primarily focused around Lucifer rather than Charlie? Yeah, I think it's finally time to get into episode 8, and this segment isn't going to be very long because, to be honest, not very much happens in terms of character development. At least on Charlie's side. Basically, we just get the final war, the extermination is finally happening, and therefore everybody's preparing. There's a really sweet scene where everybody is interacting, but Charlie ends up leaving because she's so overcome with emotions. And I love the fact that we're exploring Charlie's emotions because it seems like she's emotionally stunted, and I love the fact that she's able to just kind of let everything out in this instance. I also love that the one person who's there to support Charlie is Vaggie, and we get one of the sweetest song numbers. I love this one, super sappy, super cute. I genuinely don't understand why people hate this ship because it has some really touching moments. This is basically just reaffirming what I stated in the previous episode, that Charlie and Vaggie are the most important things to each other. In fact, they flat out say it, that they truly care and love each other more than anything. And finally, the extermination happens. We get the fight that's been built up for the entire season, and I didn't mention it in the last episode because, I forgot. But Charlie has become a far more confident person, and I love the fact that she is no longer being passive. She is actively fighting and leading people. I think the song number Ready for This really leads nicely into this episode because we see that Charlie is ready. She is finally taking command as she should as the Princess of Hell. Unfortunately, it's not enough, and Sir Penchas ends up sacrificing himself, totally in vain by the way. I mean, this was just disrespectful. Charlie then has an anime power-up and ends up trying to fight Adam, in which she totally fails at. I mean, she gets absolutely wrecked by him. Fortunately for Charlie, her daddy's the devil, and he comes and saves her at the last possible minute. They end up defeating Adam, the extermination is over, Hakuna Matata. Except not really, because Charlie is still incredibly upset that she lost her friends. And she has a right to do so. She's literally saying that she caused all of this suffering and pain. And although she kinda said it in the last episode, in this episode she flat out states that she really didn't prepare for a lot of this, she didn't think of the consequences, and maybe she was wrong. Maybe she can't save people. But of course, because she had been supporting people throughout the entire series, because she was such a fantastic friend, and because she had been maturing along the way with everybody else, all of the other characters come to support her. Everybody sees the growth that Charlie has and now wants to support her dream. So finally, after 8 episodes of analysis, I can confidently say that Charlie is a very good character. She has a good character arc, she's pretty well written, and I think that a lot of her songs are really enjoyable. But then, why does every other character overshadow her? Why do people like the side characters more than they like Charlie? And there's a really simple answer to this, and that's because Charlie has been overshadowed throughout the entire series despite all of the amazing writing that's associated with her. And this wasn't done on accident or because of a poor writing choice, this was completely intentional. Charlie was supposed to be overshadowed this entire time. In fact, this is the exact outcome that the showrunners probably wanted a lot of people to have after season 1. Because the point of season 1 was to develop the main cast so that they're able to support Charlie in upcoming seasons. Now listen, this is going to get really heavy into theory territory, but I want you guys to hear me out because it makes perfect sense. Charlie is a catalyst for every other character to end up developing. Now, she doesn't have a direct hand in the development of certain characters, but she starts the motion to it. And this is proven in the show because without Charlie, a lot of these characters wouldn't even have thought to change their lives. And now, all of these characters that have had these wild character arcs are completed characters going into season 2. That doesn't necessarily mean that their plot points have ended. No, we still have the plot point with Angel and Val, with Husk and Alistair, and with Alistair and whoever he made the deal with, right? But here's the thing, all of those plot points can be woven into the main story and will eventually lead back to Charlie. In order to have a focus on Charlie so that Charlie can go through some emotional trauma in the next seasons, you needed to establish the base characters so that they're able to support her throughout her journey. Especially given the end of season 1, in which we see that Lilith is alive, well, and in heaven and is going to go down in order to take care of Charlie, we know that she is going to go through some serious emotional turmoil. And when you think about it, Charlie cannot be going through her own crazy character arcs while all of these other characters are doing the same. If Charlie and Angel Dust are going through emotional turmoil at the exact same time, they cannot help each other, meaning that one of them has to develop first in order to help the other one. That's right, all of these characters are far more interesting, they had far more of a focus, and they had far more development because they're going to eventually help Charlie later in the series. Think about it, if we didn't see all of Alistair's development and the ways that he was trying to subtly manipulate Charlie, it wouldn't really make sense in a season 2 if he ends up doing some of this stuff. Therefore, everything has to be established in season 1. The same thing with Lucifer. We can't have Lucifer helping out Charlie if they're still going through their emotional development phase. It's kind of the same thing with the V's as well. We really needed to establish that they not only have a very weird relationship with Alistair, but also the relationship between Valentino and Angel Dust, because it's going to be a main plot point going on later in the series. And so now that everything is laid out, things can just kind of fall into place. We are now able to just follow Charlie as the main character, because Charlie is going to be one of the most interesting characters in the series, point blank. Think about it, with everything that's being set up in season 1, we not only have Lilith, Heaven, the Elder Angels that Lucifer brought back up, everything to do with the V's, the entire fact that she has a hotel to run, the fact that Alistair not only made a deal with her but has been slowly manipulating her throughout the entire series. Like, there is so much that is going to be going on with Charlie, we couldn't possibly focus on the other characters. So yes, in the upcoming seasons, we are going to be heavily Charlie focused, while the other characters are probably going to take more of a backseat. Don't get me wrong, there's still going to be an A plot and B plot, and there are going to be episodes that focus on other characters, that's for sure. But the primary focus is and always has been Charlie. But to do so, we need to make sure that these other characters are developed so they're not getting in the way of Charlie's story unfolding. So yes, this is one of the reasons why Charlie isn't really as interesting as the other characters, because her arcs are yet to come. Is Charlie poorly written? No, not in the slightest. Charlie was never supposed to be the main focus of season 1, but even still, she's a pretty well-developed character. For right now, yes, I think that the other characters definitely have far more to them than Charlie does, but when you start to look at the groundwork that the crew has been laying out, there is no question in my mind that Charlie is going to be one of the most interesting characters to come out of Has-Been, period. So mark my words, Charlie may not be in your top 5 favorites now, but she will be, and I can say that for a fact. I mean, I actually can't say that for a fact because I'm just some random person on the internet, but if you enjoyed this video, before you scroll off, you should like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see more videos, support the channel, it does help out. I like animation and popular animated media, so if you like the same thing, why not hit that subscribe button? I also do daily short content, which in my opinion is pretty good. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time, Tanuki Crew. Peace, peace!